I came up with this saying recently that I would rather be mediocre than average because at least I know when I'm mediocre that there's a signal to change. When I'm average, that just means I can coast, right? And there's no real reason to change because things are just okay, right? They're good enough to get by, and there's no real thing telling me like, hey, this is a good time to like make a change. You're really struggling with this. It's like things are good enough, and that really doesn't create any sort of pattern interrupt. The mediocrity though is something that you know you're like, man, I feel horrible. This is painful to wake up every day and do this thing. For me, it was the job that I was doing. I didn't want to do it anymore, right? I didn't want to work and do that job anymore. And it just got so painful that I was like, I don't even know if I can get to my computer and actually do this work. And so I knew at that point that I was ready to change, and I broke down and I had to just let go of what I was holding on to. And fortunately it got to that point, and I say fortunately because I guess I was average at work. I wasn't doing anything that was horrible. It wasn't like my results were terrible, and it wasn't like the performance was really all that bad. And emotionally I broke. So it's, as I build on just this segment, I'm actually thinking to myself, there's mediocre versus average, and then there's a point where you make an emotional decision because the pain that you're currently in outweighs the pain of making the change. So it is painful to make change in our life, no matter what it is, right? If you're in a career that you don't like, if you don't like the body that you've developed because of eating patterns or behaviors, or just you're drinking every weekend and you're just polluting your body, right? Or you're in a relationship that you don't like anymore, or you're in friendships that aren't serving you. No matter what it is, like, that can only go on for so long before either you break or you just decide that you're no longer okay with stuff that's just okay. Or when it's bad and mediocre, you're like, well, this is really terrible and I know I need to make a change. So there comes a crossroad in your life where you know you cannot keep going the direction you're going and expect a different result. You have to go in a new direction. You have to do what's called a pattern interrupt, right? And so whether it's an emotional decision or it's mediocrity that gets you to change, one of those two things really has to happen so that you start going in a new direction, because you do not want to live pathetically. That is not the way that you're used to living. You are a high performer and you know you're capable of bigger and better results. So go the new direction, make it happen, and quit with the mediocrity. No more. Cut it off.